Few subjects have the ability to cause conflict in the home like the subject of modesty. And frankly, sometimes parents need to be firm, as matters involving sexuality have very high stakes for everyone involved. However, my hope is that in this video I can perhaps provide a new paradigm for parents and youth as they approach this subject. My hope is that all sides can come to a better understanding of what modesty is really about, and why it matters, and why it may not be as black and white as you might think. For example, why are BYU cheerleaders allowed to wear this? How about BYU volleyball players who wear things like this? And why is it that at the church-sponsored Polynesian Cultural Center, you have temple-endowed performers wearing things like this? But it goes even deeper. For example, the earliest temple garments went from the ankle to the wrist. In the late 1800s, our modern one-piece bathing suits would have been considered absolutely scandalous and totally immodest. Yet, by 1950, the church had this particular designer swimsuit made and sold to raise money to build the Los Angeles Temple. Also, why is it that the church clearly has no problem with women exposing their shoulders while at the beach, but in the old For Strength of Youth booklet, they said women should wear clothing that covers the shoulder? Why is it okay to expose your shoulders at the beach with a group of boys, but not at a dance with a group of boys? It kind of makes people wonder if this is all just, the arbitrary whims of the current church leaders at any given moment. For example, many think the church is becoming more lax and liberal because the new version of the For Strength of Youth pamphlet does not give almost any specific rules on modesty like the old one did. The brethren have specifically said that this booklet is about teaching people principles, rather than prescribing long lists of rules of do's and don'ts. And in this, I think they are absolutely inspired. Now, don't get me wrong. Direct and clear commandments are useful and needed, but principles, properly understood, are far more powerful. Here's what I mean. Now, the commandment is to not bear false witness, to not lie. But when Nazis knock on your door and ask if you are hiding Jews, can you lie? Of course you can. The principle of honesty is not more important than the principle of protecting the life of an innocent person. Principles are applied to specific contexts to help us know what is right, and rules or laws simply cannot account for every situation. For instance, wearing tight spandex shorts may be totally appropriate in a volleyball game, but immodest when giving a talk in church on Sunday. So what I would like to do is examine the principle of modesty, because I believe that when you understand the principle, all of this starts to make more sense. And when discussing modesty, I think it's important to remember that the word is not even tied inherently to sexually revealing clothing. Modesty is the opposite of vanity. It is the opposite of calling attention to oneself for self-aggrandizement. The idea of modesty is connected to the idea of moderation, or the middle. And when properly understood, you will see that it applies as much to men as to women, as vanity is a sin that both sexes are prone to, though often in different ways. So the first thing to remember is that modesty is not fundamentally about sexually revealing clothing. It is about excessive self-admiration and pride. It's about the problem of showing off. It's about seeking to put oneself above others. It's about becoming overly focused on temporal things for the sake of the praise of men. It is about making popularity more important than God. Now, obviously, dress is one of the ways we can be immodest, but we cheapen this deep and meaningful principle when we reduce it to simply being about if a woman's shoulders are showing. But on the other hand, Can a person be immodest in how they dress? Absolutely. Let's explore this. On one extreme, we can have a woman in a burqa. On the other hand, we can go to any local club on the weekend and see clothing that is barely holding on to anything at all. But what I propose is that both of these are immodest, because moderation, the middle, exists between the extremes. Anytime you indulge in an extreme, you are by definition moving away from the middle, and often moving away from the middle is motivated by an attempt to gratify one's pride or to be popular. Perhaps you want to be seen as super righteous by wearing that pioneer dress to the dance. A desire to use an extreme to call attention to one's own piety is just as prideful and lacking in moderation as the girl who wants to show off her body to get attention and signal her own rebellious nature. Both of these extremes miss the mark. So what is the mark that we should aim for? Well, if we are going to reduce the topic of modesty to one about dress standards, then we must ask ourselves why we dress the way we do at all. Interestingly enough, there has been a lot of super interesting research on this. The way we dress and what we find attractive in fashion is deeply tied to sexual signaling. Do you know why men wear suits with shoulder pads? It is actually because broad shoulders are a subconscious signal of physical fitness and health. Do you know why women wear clothing that accentuates a narrow waist? You guessed it. It's about a subconscious signaling of physical health and reproductive fitness. In women, makeup accentuates signs of fertility, and guys will often dress in ways that signal their status among other men, as this is also tied to reproductive fitness. Don't ever forget that we have an animal nature, and that animal nature is not inherently bad. It just needs to be bridled and controlled. It needs to be moderated. Sexual signaling by dressing in an attractive manner is not bad. So much of what we call beautiful in both men and women is tied to this design by God for us to be sexual beings. And sexual signaling in moderation is what creates this beauty. Have you ever watched a ballet or an amazing ballroom dance? The beauty of the performance is deeply tied with our complementary sexual natures as men and women, and that is okay. A world without any sexuality is not the world that God wants. Sexual signaling in these controlled and moderated forms produce beauty that can be appreciated. But without moderation, this warm glow of life can turn into a flame that can burn everything around you and harm those that you love the most. I think fire is the best analogy for our sexual natures. Playing with fire is a routine hobby for dumb teenage boys, and it's always a bad idea. Fire is a wonderful and useful and beautiful thing in the right context, but only when it's controlled. A controlled flame can cut through steel. It's extremely powerful. But bringing a flamethrower to roast a marshmallow is a bad idea. So what does this mean in reality? It means that we will all sexually signal in how we dress, and that's okay. But we must look at the context. We must look at the extremes and avoid them. We should seek to be attractive without either being gaudy and vain or frumpy and flat. And yes, that will change based on circumstances. In a tribe in Africa, a woman going topless does not sexually signal to the African tribespeople the way a topless woman would attending your local neighborhood barbecue. A one-piece swimsuit in the year 1900 would have been a big sexual signal, whereas today, it's not an issue. Context matters. What is modest in one context may not be in another. To get more specific, let's take an upcoming dance at school. Obviously, the context asks for a person to be attractive. So be attractive, but also be careful about crossing lines that go from beauty and attractiveness into lewdness and vanity. Seek to be genuinely attractive without crossing unnecessary boundaries. Where are those boundaries exactly? Well, I can't say exactly, but I can say that those who seek the Lord and genuinely want to follow Him will be led to know what they should do. Perhaps the Lord will help you to feel that the sexual signaling of the group has become so extreme that you need to stand apart and perhaps even stand alone. Or perhaps you will find something to wear that will both satisfy your desire for moderation without putting yourself outside the bounds of normal social custom. Ultimately, how we dress is about sending a message to others, and that is what this is really about. Are you being intentional about the message that you're sending with how you dress? People are not wrong for wanting to send the message that they are attractive, and that will always involve some level of sexual signaling. But obviously, this can be taken too far. So what are we to do with young people? I think that we can inspire young people to seek beauty without vanity, and to be honest with themselves as they are guided by the Spirit to know when things are going too far. When a person has a deep understanding of who they are and the deep connection between sexuality and their future spouse and family, rules will become less necessary as the Spirit becomes more abundant in their lives. I think our prophets are calling us to a higher and holier way of teaching our children, starting in our own homes. They want us to teach principles. I think the goal is to inspire them, not to shame them, so that way they will want to be modest in all ways, not just in their dress. I think we are called to teach them the principles that give us the why behind our obedience. Now, don't get me wrong, this is difficult and rules will be necessary. But the principle of modesty is about avoiding vanity and pride and the praise of the world, or what we call today popularity. And these days, unrestrained sexuality is more popular than ever. But chastity is about the most important relationships we have in our lives, the relationships in our family and our future families. Our sexuality is deeply tied to our ideas of physical beauty. And I am so glad that I'm not part of a religion that says our sexual natures are bad. They're not. They just need to be moderated. We can and do appreciate beauty in the human form, along with all that implies. But we also know that beauty and attractiveness can slip into the lewd and the profane when we take it too far. Our sexual natures are meant to find their full fulfillment and expression within the context of our marriages. But too much today, it gets taken to places that kill real love and that kill real beauty. So avoid the extremes. Seek a healthy attractiveness. Find that place where there is beauty without vanity or over-the-top sexual signaling. Be honest and be deliberate in what you are trying to convey with what you wear. Make modesty a quest, not only in how you dress, but also, and more importantly perhaps, in the kind of person that you are. And appreciate the blessing of your body and all that it is capable of. You and your body are a miracle. There is nothing like you in the universe, and we should always be mindful of our sacred, embodied nature. Hey guys, if you enjoyed this video, be sure to hit that subscribe button so my future videos show up on your feed. Also, if you or someone that you know has benefited from the content here on Thoughtful Faith, please consider becoming a channel donor or volunteer by visiting my new website, thoughtfulfaith.org, and clicking on the Get Involved page.